The Volvo XC90 has been a key player in the 7-seater family SUV market for a long while now, and through that time it has established a reputation for solid build quality, great safety and a general fit and finish that means it can stand up to whatever a big family can throw at it. Now, this latest generation car builds on that with some new tech and some efficient new engines, but does it still have those fundamentals that mean it can suit family life and can suit whatever you need to do on a day-to-day basis? Well, that's what we're going to find out today in this full review. One of the best things about Volvo styling is that its changes are incremental over time. So this brand new XC90 really doesn't look dissimilar from the second generation car that came out a few years ago. And that means you can still pick from the used market and you don't have to trade off against styling. This most recent one gets some nice chrome touches and very large alloy wheels, which could prove a little bit of an interesting choice if you're often near large inner city curbs. I've always really liked the interior of the Volvo XC90 because it's got that kind of Scandinavian classic stripped back feel, but it's backed up by really good materials and very good ergonomics too. Now it's funny, when the XC90 first came out, we all thought this screen was massive, and by modern standards it doesn't feel that large anymore, but it's very good to use and it runs on Android's own system these days, so funny enough, it works very well. All of your main apps are already included, like Google Maps, and they work swiftly and very easily. Elsewhere, I really like the general fit and finish. This car in particular has quite a fancy crystal gear knob, which actually gets quite chilly on a cold morning, but on this version you do get a brilliantly hot heated steering wheel which contrasts it, and in fact it's one of the most ferocious heated steering wheels I've experienced, so for me that's really good. But there are plenty of storage options, nice deep section in here and some good bins down the side. One feature I like, which is completely over-engineered but is a good one to check out, is the fact that you press a button and that opens the glove box. Completely needless, but a nice bit of theatre to an otherwise quite straightforward cabin. The great sense of fit and finish that you get from the forward part of the cabin is relayed back here too. So we've got nice materials, good solid build quality throughout, and actually I like the mix of some hard-wearing plastics and rubberized sections lower down with these nice leather seats, because the areas that are going to get, well, kicked or scuffed are built with materials that are going to be more hard-wearing than softer ones. You've also got independent controls for heating and ventilation, and this car has heated seats in the back too, which is a nice and rather luxurious option. But in the centre you've got two USB-C outlets for charging your devices. I'd like to see a couple more, but that's not too bad, and it means that you should be able to get at least one charger per device for two people sat in the back here. It's quite a large transmission hump, so whoever's going to be sitting in the middle is going to get somewhat of a short straw. But again, it's got a nice rubberized cover, so if you do have to put your feet there, then you're not going to be damaging the carpet. Some nice little string sections at the back of the seats, and some, well, reasonably sized cubbies at the side. So practicality, I'd say, is good. There aren't too many areas to store those loose items, but the fundamentals are excellent, and you've got good materials used throughout, so this car is going to look good regardless of what you throw at it. This, of course, being a Volvo and having safety of its core, means that you do get ISOFIX points for the two outermost chairs, and that means you can get those car seats fitted and in place nice and securely, and the doors open relatively wide, so actually getting them through the door shouldn't prove too tricky either. Compared to a car like the Land Rover Discovery, which is one of the XC90's key rivals, you feel slightly lower in the car. You haven't got quite as an elevated experience for the person sitting in the back. And that does mean that for kids who like to look out, then they're not going to be able to see quite as much at the front. But having said that, out the side you've still got really big windows, so you can take in the views as you travel past. As you can see, the space in the rearmost row of the XC90 is actually pretty acceptable. I've got that seat in its usual position, and I've got a reasonable amount of knee room. Alright, it's tight, but it's perfectly serviceable for short trips, and there's a decent amount of room for my feet too. Headroom is also excellent, considering the car does naturally slope away, and I think, well, I feel quite comfortable here. If the seats all came up, I would be quite happy here for a short to medium length journey, though a longer one might start to feel a little bit claustrophobic. You've also got a little cup holder at the side and a small storage area too. You also get your own vents in the back, so you can switch those on and off, though you can't adjust the heat, of course. That's going to have to be dealt with by the person in front of you. However, for kids, I think they're going to have loads of space back here. So it does mean it is a genuine 7-seater rather than an occasional 7-seater. Now, unlike the original XC90, you don't get a split tailgate in this modern version. And I think that's a bit of a shame, because it was always nice to fold it down and be able to have something to sit on if you wanted to put on your wellies or change your boots. But having said that, the level of practicality and spaciousness that you get here is excellent. So even with all the seats in place, you've still got 356 litres, which is nice and square. And so that means if you've got everyone in place, you can still have enough room for a shop or some soft bags. Lower that down, and that boot space increases to just over 1,000 litres, and take all the seats down, and that just goes over to 1,800 litres, which means that there's absolutely boatloads of space, and you'll be able to get big items, you'll be able to put bikes in there, anything you could really need, or big trips to the tip are going to be swallowed up by this car with no trouble at all. Also, the seating arrangement is quite flexible, and lowering and raising the seats isn't too tricky, which means that you aren't going to have to be all fingers and thumbs when it comes to lowering or raising the chairs. The XC90 that I'm in today is the top rung plug-in hybrid version, and it combines a 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine with an electric motor and battery for a combined output of 450 brake horsepower, which is absolutely mad. And it means that you get 0 to 60 in just over 5 seconds, which is insane for a car of this size and type. That's huge performance. Do you really need it? Well, probably not. And now Volvo quote that you should get over 200 mpg from this car, but that requires you to have it fully charged up with electricity at all times. And in fact, when you've got a full battery, you should be able to do around 47 miles on electric power alone. So it's a great option if you're taking the kids to school, or if you've got a shorter commute with charging points at either end. If that's the case, then you've got loads of scope for reducing your fuel bills. However, if you're doing longer journeys, if you're sitting on the motorway for a good period of time, then I don't think it makes quite as much sense, and you might want to go for one of the mild hybrid options instead. In fact, driving this car without any electric juice in it, I've found that the economy figures can drop to the mid-20s, which I don't feel is all that great in this day and age. I think probably 15 years ago, a large SUV like this, you wouldn't have really faulted it for doing mid-20s, but nowadays, particularly with a car as focused on efficiency as this one, it doesn't seem as appropriate. But elsewhere, I just really enjoy driving the XC90. It doesn't feel overly large, and in fact you sit in the car rather than on it, as you do with some other SUVs, and that makes it just feel a little bit more grounded, a little bit more planted. The steering is nice and light, and actually it's not tricky to park because you've got loads of cameras, loads of assistance systems, and the car itself is actually quite nice and square, so it's easy to position. At a cruise, it's really comfortable, very refined, and I think only the really large alloy wheels that we've got on this top spec version disrupt the ride, because otherwise I know it's quite pleasant. One thing I actually do quite like about the XC90 as well is that the cabin is relatively subdued at night. Now, it sounds like an odd thing to say, but particularly on some of the latest Mercedes cars and other luxury models, I've been finding that the ambient lighting with its various different colours can be a bit distracting, and I end up trying to shut it all off just so I can drive at night without feeling like I'm in a nightclub. This car really toned down, and it's relaxing at night. It's not distracting, so your eyes don't feel like they're on stalks, just dancing between purple and blue lights ahead of you. The XC90 continues to be one of the very best 7-seater SUVs around. It's a flexible interior that it offers, with loads of seating arrangements and a big boot if you really need it. This plug-in hybrid powertrain, well, I'm still on the fence slightly about it, but the rest of the lineup offers great versatility, and the good thing about the XC90 is that it hasn't really aged over time, so if you are considering a used example, there's not going to be too much of a trade-off. Certainly, if you have a large family, or if you're looking to take a couple of passengers in great comfort over long distances, then the XC90 continues to be a very solid choice. Thank you for watching this motors.co.uk new car review on the Volvo XC90. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, please leave us a like below and let us know what you think of the XC90. Would you choose this, or would you go for something like a Land Rover Discovery instead? Let us know in the comments section. And while you're here, please remember to subscribe to the motors.co.uk YouTube channel and hit that bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new review.